Hi, I'm Jim Ward of the Middle Country Public Library, and I'd like to welcome you to episode 17 in our History Bites series. Today, we will discuss Abraham Lincoln's most famous speech, the Gettysburg Address. The Battle of Gettysburg in Pennsylvania was fought during the American Civil War from July 1st to July 3rd, 1863. Confederate General Robert E. Lee invaded the North to try to win on Northern soil and forced Lincoln to the peace table. Gettysburg was a Union victory that culminated with the famous Pickett's Charge on the third day as Union soldiers repulsed the Confederate assault on Cemetery Ridge. The Confederates eventually retreated back across the Potomac, ending General Robert E. Lee's second invasion of the North. Gettysburg was the bloodiest battle ever fought on American soil. Between the two sides, there were 50,000 men killed, wounded, or missing. Nearly 8,000 men were killed during the three-day battle. In the immediate aftermath, thousands of dead men and animals were still unburied, and the fields for miles were littered with the materials of war. Many were barely buried in shallow graves. Over 20,000 wounded filled barns, homes, churches, and meadows, which had been converted to serve as field hospitals. The Gettysburg community of 2,400 citizens, not used to the hard hand of war like numerous communities in Virginia, was overwhelmed with what had happened around them and what had been left behind. Pennsylvania Governor Andrew Curtin visited the battlefield with local citizen and lawyer David Wills on July 10, 1863, and was shocked by its condition. Graves were left open and bones scattered. He designated Wills as a state agent charged with seeing to the proper burial of Pennsylvania's dead. At a meeting of state agents in Wills's house several days later, the idea of establishing a permanent national cemetery for all Union dead was advanced. Governor Curtin approved and gave Wills the authority to oversee its construction. Local men were hired to remove men from the battlefield and rebury them in the new national cemetery. David Wills wrote to President Abraham Lincoln to invite him to speak at the cemetery dedication to offer, quote, a few appropriate remarks. When Lincoln's train pulled into the train station in Gettysburg on November 18, 1863, he was greeted by immense crowds and dignitaries while a Marine band played. He walked to the town center to the David Wills house, where Lincoln stayed as a guest of the Wills family the night before the dedication. In this bedroom, Lincoln sat down to finish his address. Today, you can visit the David Wills house, which is run by the National Park Service, and stand in the room where President Lincoln finished revising the Gettysburg Address. That is the original bed that Abraham Lincoln slept in the night of November 18, 1863. On November 19th, as many as 20,000 people converged on Gettysburg to honor the dead and to catch a glimpse of visiting dignitaries. The keynote speaker was Edward Everett, a celebrated orator of the day and former president of Harvard. He spoke for 2 hours, and then Lincoln rose. Reports have indicated that Lincoln was possibly delivering the address while battling a case of smallpox. In his speech, Lincoln started off by reminding his audience that just 87 years had passed since the founding of the nation, and went on to embolden the Union cause with some of the most stirring words ever spoken. He expanded the focus of the war to also be a war to abolish slavery as well and create a new birth of freedom. After the dedication, Everett wrote to Lincoln praising him for the speech he delivered. Quote, I should be glad if I could flatter myself that I came as near to the central idea of the occasion in 2 hours as you did in 2 minutes. Fourscore and 7 years ago, our fathers brought forth on this continent a new nation, conceived in liberty and dedicated to the proposition that all men are created equal. Now we are engaged in a great civil war, testing whether that nation or any nation so conceived and so dedicated can endure. We are met on a great battlefield of that war. We have come to dedicate a portion of that field as a final resting place for those who here gave their lives that that nation might live. it is altogether fitting and proper that we should do this. But in a larger sense, we cannot dedicate, we cannot consecrate, we cannot hallow this ground. The brave men, living and dead, who struggled here have consecrated it far above our poor power to add or detract. The world will little note nor long remember what we say here, but it can never forget what they did here. It is for us, the living, rather, to be dedicated here to the unfinished work which they who fought here have thus far so nobly advanced. It is rather for us to be here dedicated to the great task remaining before us, that from these honored dead we take increased devotion to that cause for which they here gave the last full measure of devotion. That we here highly resolve that these dead shall not have died in vain. That this nation, under God, shall have a new birth of freedom, and that government of the people, by the people, for the people, shall not perish from the earth. After Lincoln's assassination in April 1865, Senator Charles Sumner of Massachusetts wrote of the address, quote, "That speech, uttered at the field of Gettysburg and now sanctified by the martyrdom of its author, is a monumental act. In the modesty of his nature, he said, 'The world will little note nor long remember what we say here, but it can never forget what they did here.' He was mistaken. The world at once noted what he said and will never cease to remember it." End quote. I'd like to thank you all for joining us for today's episode. If you enjoyed it, click like, and if you watched on YouTube, hit subscribe. Thanks so much, and we'll see you all next time.